it. Imagine a world where two superpowers, each with its own vision for the future, are moving toward a collision course militarily, economically, and technologically. You see it in the headlines, you feel it in global markets, and you hear it in political speeches. The United States and China are no longer just competitors. They are rivals shaping the direction of the 21st century. Picture satellite images of warships moving through the Pacific, CEOs warning about supply chain threats, tech bans spreading across continents, and diplomats trading sharp words. The tension is not just about borders or tariffs, it's about who will lead the world tomorrow. And behind every conflict, every negotiation, and every news alert lies a deeper story about power, ambition, and two very different ideas of what the world should look like. But how did we get here? Why are the United States and China, two nations deeply connected through trade, culture, and technology, finding themselves pulled apart by growing mistrust? To understand this clash, we have to go beyond the simple narrative of East versus West. We need to look at how America became the undisputed global superpower after World War II, how China rose from isolation and poverty to become the world's manufacturing engine, and why these parallel paths eventually crossed in a way that made friction almost unavoidable. This isn't just about politics or ideology. It's about economics, military power, global influence, and technological supremacy all competing at the same time. The US sees itself as defending a world order it helped build. China sees itself reclaiming a central role it held for centuries before its decline. Each side believes it is acting to protect its future, its people, and its place in history. And as both countries grow more powerful, the stakes grow higher. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers and uncover the real reasons behind the US-China clash. We'll explore the economic rivalry reshaping industries across the world, the technological arms race driving innovation and fear, the military standoff in the Pacific, and the ideological divide that makes cooperation harder with each passing year. By the end, you'll see how this competition affects not just governments, but your daily life, from the price of your smartphone, to the security of global supply chains, to the very future of peace and stability. So buckle in, because the story of why the US and China are against each other is bigger, more complex, and more consequential than most people realize. And the world's future may depend on how this rivalry unfolds. 1. Historical background approximately equals 200 words. The relationship between the United States and China didn't start as a rivalry. In fact, for decades, they had little direct conflict. After World War II, the US emerged as the most powerful nation economically and militarily, shaping the global order through alliances, institutions, and free market leadership. China, meanwhile, went through political upheaval, civil war, and isolation under Mao Zedong. It wasn't until the late 1970s, when Deng Xiaoping introduced sweeping economic reforms, that China began integrating with the global economy. Factories opened, foreign investment poured in, and China rapidly transformed from an agrarian state into a major industrial power. By the early 2000s, China's massive population and manufacturing efficiency allowed it to become a global export giant. For a time, the US welcomed this growth, thinking economic integration would lead to political liberalization. But as China's influence expanded and its economy approached US levels, the dynamic shifted. Washington began to perceive China not just as a partner, but as a potential challenger to the international system America leads. What began as economic cooperation slowly turned into strategic competition. The past century shaped their rise. Now, the question is how they coexist moving forward. 2. Economic competition approximately equals 200 words. Economic rivalry is one of the core drivers of US-China tensions. The United States is the world's largest consumer market, while China is the world's largest manufacturing hub. This creates a relationship of deep interdependence, but also friction. American companies rely on Chinese factories for cheap production, and China depends on access to American consumers. Yet, beneath this cooperation lies a struggle for economic dominance. The US accuses China of unfair trade practices, including state subsidies, forced technology transfers, and intellectual property theft. China, in turn, argues that the US uses its power to block Chinese firms from competing fairly on the global stage. The trade war that began in 2018 revealed how serious the economic clash had become. Tariffs were imposed on hundreds of billions of dollars in goods, disrupting supply chains worldwide. While both sides suffered economically, the conflict signaled a deeper shift. The US wants to protect its industries, and China aims to move from low-cost manufacturing to high-tech leadership. Both countries also compete for control of vital resources, shipping routes, and global markets. As each pushes to secure its economic future, competition becomes inevitably. The world economy feels the impact. 3. Technology and innovation race approximately equals 200 words. One of the most intense fronts of the rivalry is the race for technological supremacy. For decades, the United States led the world in innovation: semiconductors, the internet, aerospace, AI research. But China has invested massively in science and technology, aiming to reduce dependence on foreign tech and become a global leader in advanced industries. This ambition sparked increasing US concern. Technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 5G infrastructure, and advanced chips aren't just economic tools, they are national security assets. Whoever leads these fields gains power over global communication networks, military capabilities, and digital ecosystems. The US has responded with restrictions such as banning Huawei from building 5G networks in many countries and limiting China's access to cutting-edge semiconductor technology. China views these actions as attempts to slow its rise. Meanwhile, controversies over apps like TikTok and the use of Chinese-made drones show how technology has become a battleground for influence and privacy. This competition is reshaping supply chains, with both nations trying to build self-sufficient tech ecosystems. The tech race isn't only about gadgets, it's about who sets future global standards. And whichever nation wins may end up shaping the digital world for decades. 4. Military and security tensions approximately equals 200 words. The Indo-Pacific region has become the central stage for U.S.-China military tensions. The U.S. maintains alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines, and regularly conducts naval patrols to ensure open sea routes. China views these actions as containment, arguing that the U.S. is trying to limit its ability to secure its own coastline and regional interests. Over the last 2 decades, China has rapidly modernized its military, building advanced missiles, expanding its navy, and developing cutting-edge cyber and space capabilities. This buildup alarms U.S. strategists who worry about shifting power in the Pacific. The South China Sea is especially tense. China claims large portions of the sea and has built artificial islands equipped with runways and missile systems. The U.S. rejects these claims and conducts freedom of navigation operations to challenge what it calls illegal maritime expansion. Both sides often encounter each other's ships and aircraft at close range, raising fears of accidental conflict. While neither country wants war, both are preparing for worst-case scenarios. This arms buildup and strategic rivalry create an environment where a miscalculation could spark a much larger crisis. 5. Taiwan, the most dangerous flashpoint, approximately equals 200 words. Taiwan is arguably the most sensitive issue in U.S.-China relations. China considers Taiwan a part of its territory and insists on eventual reunification, even refusing to rule out military force. The island, however, operates as a self-governed democracy with its own military currency and political system. The United States follows a policy called strategic ambiguity, officially acknowledging China's One China position, but still providing Taiwan with defensive weapons and maintaining unofficial relations. For China, Taiwan represents unfinished historical business and a symbol of national unity. For the U.S., Taiwan is crucial for several reasons: supporting democratic systems, maintaining balance in the Pacific, and protecting access to advanced semiconductor technology. Taiwan's chip industry, led by TSMC, produces the world's most advanced processors, vital for everything from smartphones to military equipment. The flashpoint becomes dangerous because both sides see the issue as existential. China views foreign support for Taiwan as interference in its internal affairs. The U.S. sees Chinese aggression toward Taiwan as destabilizing and unacceptable. Military exercises, airspace incursions, and political visits frequently raise tensions. Even a small misstep could escalate, making Taiwan the most likely trigger for a major U.S.-China conflict. 6. Ideological differences approximately equals 200 words. Beyond economics and military power, the U.S.-China rivalry is driven by contrasting worldviews. The United States promotes a democratic, open market model and sees individual freedoms and human rights as central to global stability. China operates under a one-party system that emphasizes collective stability, economic development, and political control. These opposing philosophies influence how both countries behave internationally, interpret each other's actions, and form alliances. From the American perspective, China's political system and approach to governance challenge the values-based international order built. After World War II, Washington often criticizes China over censorship, surveillance, and the lack of political freedoms. China counters by arguing that every nation has the right to choose its own system, and that Western models are not the only path to progress. Ideology shapes mistrust. The US worries that China's growing influence could spread authoritarian practices. While China believes the US tries to undermine its stability through criticism and support for political dissent. This clash of values doesn't guarantee conflict, but it creates a sense of incompatibility that makes cooperation harder. Even when both nations want to work together, ideological suspicion lingers beneath the surface. 7. Global influence and power projection approximately equals 200 words. The rivalry between the US and China extends far beyond their borders. Both nations are competing for influence across Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), a massive global infrastructure and investment program, has funded ports, railways, and energy projects worldwide. Supporters say it helps developing countries grow. Critics argue it increases China's leverage and creates debt dependency. The US responds with its own partnerships, development funding, and diplomatic outreach, seeking to maintain leadership in global institutions. Cultural influence is another front. The US dominates through entertainment, education, and global brands. China works through media, technology exports, and economic incentives. In international organizations like the UN and WTO, both nations push for rules and standards that align with their interests. This competition isn't necessarily about territories, about shaping the future global order. Who sets the norms for trade? Who controls critical infrastructure? Who becomes the main partner for developing nations? As both powers expand their reach, smaller countries often feel caught in the middle, balancing economic opportunity with geopolitical pressure. The rivalry for global influence is subtle, strategic, and long-term. 8 areas of cooperation approximately equals 200 words. Despite the rising tensions, the US and China also share significant areas of cooperation that often go overlooked. Their economies are deeply interconnected. China is a major supplier of manufactured goods, while the US is a key market and source of innovation. Both nations rely on global stability to maintain growth. Cutting ties completely would cause severe economic damage on both sides, so cooperation remains essential even during periods of conflict. Climate change is another area where both countries must work together. As the world's two largest emitters, any meaningful progress on global climate goals requires collaboration between Washington and Beijing. Scientific research, pandemic response, and nuclear non-proliferation are additional fields where cooperation benefits both nations and the world. Even in the tech sector, where competition is fierce, certain standards and scientific exchanges still occur. Diplomats from both sides regularly meet to keep communication open and prevent misunderstandings from escalating into crisis. These shared interests remind us that the US-China relationship is not simply hostile. It's a combination of rivalry and cooperation, complex, fragile, and constantly shifting. Understanding these collaborative areas is key to seeing the full picture, not just the conflict. As we've seen, the clash between the United States and China is not driven by one single issue, but by a long list of forces that have been building for decades: economics, technology, military strength, ideology, and global influence. These two nations are deeply intertwined, yet fundamentally different, competing for leadership in a world that's changing faster than ever before. The United States is trying to uphold the system it built after World War II, while China is pushing to reshape that system to reflect its own rise and ambitions. Neither side sees itself as the aggressor. Each believes it is protecting its national interests, its people, and its vision for the future. But rivalry does not always mean conflict. Despite their differences, both countries understand the cost of confrontation. Their economies depend on each other. Their scientific progress often overlaps. Their decisions impact billions of people, from factory workers to business leaders to future generations. The challenge and perhaps the opportunity lies in managing this competition without letting it spiral out of control. The story of US-China relations is far from over. In many ways, it is just beginning. What happens next will shape the global economy, the balance of power, and the stability of the world for decades to come. As these two giants navigate a future defined by both competition and cooperation, the real question remains: can they coexist on the same global stage? Or will their clash define the century ahead?